Admiral Jackson Moore of the United Earth Defense vessel Retribution stared through the viewport at the alien ship that had just appeared at the edge of Saturn's rings. The vessel was beautiful, an iridescent teardrop that seemed to shimmer between states of matter, like it couldn't decide if it wanted to be solid or liquid or something else entirely. "What's the status on our mysterious visitor?" Moore asked, his voice carrying the gravitas of 30 years in Earth's unified space forces. Lieutenant Ryan Thompson looked up from his console. "Sir, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. Our systems are translating. It appears to be a surrender message." Moore's eyebrows shot up. "A surrender? We haven't even engaged them." "Yes, sir. They're specifically requesting to speak with our commanding officer and are transmitting coordinates for a neutral meeting location." Commander Sarah Wilson approached from the tactical station. "Admiral, I don't like this. It could be a trap. They appeared out of nowhere, and now they're surrendering without provocation." "I share your concern, Commander." Moore stroked his salt and pepper beard. "But I'm more curious than worried. Let's hear their full message." High Assessor Zythril of the Galactic Hegemony Expedition vessel. Inevitable dominance trembled as he composed the surrender message. Just 6 hours ago he had been confidently reporting to the Council of 5,000 that the primitive species of the third planet would be an easy acquisition. Another footnote in the hegemony's 10,000-year expansion. Now, his six-fingered hands shook as he approved the final transmission. "Is it sent?" asked Subdirector Ayla Lara, her translucent skin pulsing with the blue bioluminescence of extreme distress. "Yes." Zythril's voice, synthesizer, barely managed to form the word. "The humans will receive our unconditional surrender momentarily." "I still do not understand," said Chief Scientist Wurex, his eye stalks contracting with confusion. "We simply performed a standard pre-contact analysis scan. We didn't attack them. But we saw what's inside that vessel," Zythril hissed. "We saw what they are." The meeting took place on Titan, Saturn's largest moon. Moore insisted on going himself, despite his officers' protests. If these aliens were surrendering without a fight, he needed to understand why. The shuttle touched down near the alien landing craft, which seemed almost alive, its surface rippling like disturbed water. Moore stepped out in his environmental suit, flanked by 4 armed Marines. The alien delegation emerged from their craft, 3 willowy beings with opalescent skin that shifted colors as they moved. They wore no protective gear despite Titan's harsh atmosphere, suggesting advanced biological engineering or personal force fields. The central figure approached and bent into what Moore recognized as a formal bow. "Admiral Moore, I am High Assessor Zythril of the Galactic Hegemony. We thank you for accepting our surrender." The voice came through Moore's suit speakers, translated by the ship's AI. "I'm still not clear on why you're surrendering, High Assessor," Moore replied. "We detected your ship less than 12 hours ago. We've exchanged no fire. We've barely exchanged words." "We scanned your vessel," Zythril said, a ripple of what looked like fear passing through his translucent skin. "It is our standard procedure before making contact with new species. And we saw everything." The alien seemed to shrink slightly. "Your species' history, your wars, your resilience, your mentality." Moore crossed his arms. "And that was enough to make you surrender?" "Admiral Moore," Zythril said, his tone deadly serious. "Your kind are the only species we have ever encountered who developed nuclear weapons, used them on your own planet, and then kept." 6 hours earlier, aboard the Inevitable Dominance, the hegemony's most sophisticated scanning technology had swept over the human battleship. The scan was comprehensive, mapping not just the physical structure of the vessel, but analyzing the biological organisms inside, their technology, their cultural artifacts, even the information stored in their computers. Chief Scientist Wurex had been excited to document another primitive species for the hegemony's vast archives. The scan should have revealed a typical pre-FTL civilization, curious, perhaps dangerous, on a planetary scale, but ultimately manageable. What it revealed instead sent shockwaves through the crew. "Impossible," Wurex whispered as the data flooded his neural interface. "This cannot be accurate." But further scans only confirmed the horrifying truth. The primitive-looking vessel, despite its bulky design and relatively modest size, was a masterpiece of weaponized ingenuity. The structural analysis revealed redundant systems for everything critical. The humans had built their ship not just to survive battle, but to continue fighting while critically damaged. And the weapons? The ship bristled with kinetic, explosive, and directed energy weapons, some primitive, others surprisingly advanced. But what terrified the hegemony crew most wasn't the variety of weapons, it was the mentality behind them. They've designed their ship to absorb damage, Alara noted with horror, not primarily to avoid it, to absorb it and keep fighting. The biological scans were equally disturbing. These humans were classified as carbon-based omnivores, but their physical adaptation profile was unlike anything in the hegemony database. They could survive in environmental conditions that would kill most sentients. Their bodies could withstand radiation levels that would liquefy hegemony species. Their immune systems were hyper-aggressive, constantly at war with microscopic invaders. "Look at their entertainment," junior analyst Tibik called out. "They simulate conflict for pleasure." The data from the human computers revealed thousands of fictional scenarios centered around warfare, disaster, survival against overwhelming odds, and humans winning against vastly superior forces. Most disturbing of all was the historical data. These humans had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times, yet had somehow pulled back from the brink and continued advancing. They had weaponized the atom, filled their orbital space with debris that threatened their own satellites, poisoned their atmosphere, driven countless species to extinction, and yet they persisted, adapted, overcame. The hegemony, in its 10,000 years of existence, had encountered over 300 intelligent species. None had been so relentlessly resilient. None had survived their own destructive tendencies with such stubborn determination. "They're predators," Sathril whispered, as the full implications became clear. "Not just physically, their entire psychology is predatory. They don't surrender, they don't give up, they adapt and overcome or die trying." The final horror came when the scan analyzed the human command structure. In the hegemony, authority flowed from the top down, absolute and unquestioned. But these humans operated differently. Their captains could make independent decisions in the field without consulting higher authorities. Even their lowest-ranked crew members were expected to show initiative if circumstances required it. "End the scan," Sathril ordered, his voice synthesizer struggling to maintain coherence. "Begin surrender protocols immediately." "Surrender?" Vorex's eye stalks quivered in shock. "The hegemony has never surrendered to a pre-FTL species." "We have never encountered a species like this," Sathril replied. "If we engage them, they will not stop until they defeat us. And if, when they defeat us, they will reverse engineer our technology and spread throughout the galaxy." Alara's bioluminescence pulsed with fear. "The Council will never accept this decision." "The Council is 50 light-years away," Sathril said. "They did not see what we just saw. By the time our report reaches them, it will be too late if we make the wrong decision now." He turned to face his senior officers, his translucent skin now pale with resolution. "We surrender today, or the hegemony falls tomorrow." Back on Titan's surface, Moore listened as Sathril explained, his alien features contorting with what appeared to be genuine terror. "Your ships are designed to continue fighting even as they die. Your people view death in battle as honorable. You've survived multiple near extinctions of your own making. Your entertainment glorifies victory against impossible odds." The alien's voice wavered. "Everything about your species terrifies us." Moore frowned. "High Assessor, humanity has come a long way. Yes, our history is violent, but we've learned from it. We've established peace among our own kind. We're explorers now, more than warriors." "Yet your exploration vessel is bristling with weapons," Sathril countered. "We detected weapons that could reduce entire cities to ash. Your crew trains daily for combat scenarios." "The Retribution is a defense vessel," Moore explained. "Space is dangerous. We've encountered hostile, non-sentient organisms, cosmic phenomena that could destroy unshielded ships. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. You prepare for war in a time of peace," Sathril said. "In the hegemony's experience, that indicates a species that expects, even welcomes, conflict." Moore sighed. These aliens had fundamentally misunderstood humanity, or perhaps they understood all too well the darker aspects of human nature. What he didn't yet realize was that this encounter would change everything. Humanity was about to step onto a galactic stage it didn't know existed, facing a civilization that feared it before they'd even properly met. And somewhere in deep space, something else was watching. Something that had orchestrated this meeting for reasons neither humanity nor the hegemony could begin to comprehend. 2 weeks after the unexpected surrender on Titan, Admiral Moore sat in his quarters aboard the Retribution, reviewing the data shared by the hegemony. Earth's governments had been thrown into chaos at the revelation of a vast interstellar civilization. But Moore's focus remained on understanding these aliens who feared humanity so profoundly. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called, and Commander Wilson stepped inside. "Admiral, we've completed our analysis of the hegemony data. You'll want to see this immediately." Her normally composed face showed rare concern. Moore gestured to the chair across from him. "What have we learned, Commander?" "The hegemony has existed for over 10,000 years, spanning roughly 8% of the Milky Way galaxy. They've encountered 317 intelligent species and peacefully incorporated most into their collective." Mo raised an eyebrow. Wilson nodded grimly. "That's what's troubling. 23 species were deemed incompatible with galactic harmony and were contained." "Contained," Moore repeated. "I don't like the sound of that." "You shouldn't." Wilson handed him a tablet. These species were quarantined to their home systems with automated weapon platforms preventing space travel. The hegemony justifies this as preventing predatory species from threatening galactic peace. Moore scrolled through the data, his expression darkening. And the common denominator among these predatory species? They all evolved from pursuit predators, like humans. Beings that hunted by outlasting their prey. Species with endurance, tenacity, and what the hegemony terms psychological aggression persistence, the unwillingness to abandon a course of action once committed. Moore set the tablet down. "They're afraid of us because we don't give up." "Essentially, yes." To the hegemony, a species that evolved chasing down prey until it collapses from exhaustion is fundamentally disturbing. They see it as pathological determination, and yet they surrendered instead of trying to contain us. Wilson leaned forward. "That's the truly concerning part, sir. Based on their records, we're the most terrifying species they've ever encountered." On the inevitable dominance, now in orbit around Jupiter alongside the Retribution, Zythril faced growing dissent among his crew. "This is unprecedented," Forex argued during the command staff meeting. "We've revealed classified technology to a containment-class species. The Council will have us executed for treason." "I made the only logical choice," Zythril countered, though his certainty had begun to waver. "The scan revealed capabilities beyond any containment-class species we've encountered. Humanity is too dangerous to provoke and too resilient to successfully contain. We could have simply left," Subdirector Aelara suggested, "departed this system and recommended maximum quarantine protocols, and when they inevitably broke that quarantine," Zythril asked, "when they reverse-engineered some piece of our technology left behind or detected our containment measures, we would face an enemy that never surrenders, never forgets, and never forgives." The debate was interrupted by an alert. The ship's sensors had detected unusual activity in the outer system. "Multiple objects approaching from beyond the heliopause," reported the sensor officer. "Configuration unknown." Zythril felt a cold dread settle over him. "Show me." The display revealed dozens of crystalline structures accelerating toward the inner system. They matched nothing in the hegemony database. "Are they human vessels?" Alara asked. "Negative," the sensor officer replied. "The humans appear equally concerned. They're mobilizing their ship." Indeed, the Retribution had powered up its engines and was moving to an intercept trajectory. "Open a channel to Admiral Moore," Zythril ordered. Whatever these objects were, they represented an unknown threat, possibly to both species. "Admiral, the alien fleet has changed course," Lieutenant Thompson reported from his station on the Retribution's bridge. "They're no longer approaching Jupiter. They're heading directly for Earth." Moore clenched his jaw. "Time to intercept?" "At current acceleration, they'll reach Earth orbit in 43 hours. "And our best speed to intercept?" "We can position ourselves between them and Earth in 37 hours, sir." "But," Thompson hesitated. "Speak freely, Lieutenant. There are at least 50 vessels, sir. Even with the hegemony ship assisting, the odds are—" "Noted, Lieutenant." Moore cut him off. "Contact Earth Command. Inform them of our intention to intercept. Then open a channel to High Assessor Zythril." Within moments, Zythrill's alien features appeared on the main screen. Admiral Moore, we've detected the approaching vessels as well. Do you recognize them? I assess. No, they match nothing in our extensive records. This is troubling. Moore studied the alien's expression, noticing the fear that seemed to constantly ripple beneath its translucent skin. I intend to intercept these vessels before they reach Earth. Will the inevitable dominance assist us? Zythrill's skin pulsed with blue distress signals. Admiral, with respect, that would be suicide. Our scans indicate these vessels possess technology beyond even hegemony understanding. I recommend immediate evacuation of your leadership and cultural repositories. Evacuation isn't an option, Moore replied firmly. Earth is our home, and we will defend it. Even against impossible odds? Zythrill asked. Especially against impossible odds. Moore's voice was steel. That's what humans do. The alien was silent for a long moment. This is precisely what terrifies us about your kind, Admiral. Another pause. But perhaps it is also what we need now. We will join you. The engagement was brief and devastating. The crystalline vessels brushed aside the human and hegemony defenses as if they were annoying insects. The Retribution managed to destroy 2 of the alien craft before taking critical damage. The inevitable dominance fared slightly better with its advanced shields, but was ultimately crippled as well. Moore dragged himself back to his command chair as emergency systems fought to contain multiple hull breaches. Status report. Main weapons offline. Engines at 12%. Life support failing on decks 3 through 7. Commander Wilson reported, blood streaming from a gash on her forehead. The hegemony vessel is in similar condition, and the enemy fleet? Continuing to Earth, sir. We barely scratched them. Moore stared at the tactical display, watching the implacable advance of the crystalline vessels. Open a channel to Zythrill. The alien commander appeared on a damaged screen, his environment visibly damaged with fires being extinguished in the background. Admiral, it seems we face extinction together. Not yet, Moore replied. My engineers have a theory about these crystalline ships. We detected a pattern in their shield harmonics during our brief exchange of fire. With your more advanced sensors, we might be able to exploit it. Zythrill's expression changed to something Moore couldn't interpret. You're still planning to fight? After this defeat? This wasn't a defeat, Moore corrected. It was data collection. For the first time, Zythrill made a sound that the translator identified as laughter, a bitter, frightened sound. You truly are predators. Even facing annihilation, you look for the next attack strategy. Will you help us hire Cessa? Zythrill seemed to come to a decision. Yes, but not as you suggest. There is something I must tell you. Something I've hidden since our first meeting. The truth, when revealed, shattered everything Moore thought he understood about their situation. The hegemony chose to contact Earth specifically, Zythrill explained as they huddled in the damaged bridge of the Retribution. Our leaders detected unusual quantum signatures emanating from your solar system 2 years ago. Signatures that matched ancient warnings in our most classified archives. Warnings about what? Moore demanded. The precursors. The species that dominated this galaxy before the hegemony, before any of our civilizations. They transcended physical form millions of years ago, becoming beings of pure energy and thought, most departed for other dimensions. But legends speak of some who remained, watching, waiting. And you think these crystalline ships are these precursors? No, Zythrill's skin had gone almost translucent with stress. They are the ancient enemy that drove the precursors to transcend in the first place. The harvesters, beings that consume the potential of sentient species. Commander Wilson stepped forward. What do you mean by potential? All sentient life generates what our scientists call psychic quantum resonance, the energy of consciousness itself. The harvesters feed on this energy, preferring it at the moment of a civilization's greatest achievement or most profound despair. They are farmers of sentience, and they have returned to harvest this system. Moore processed this revelation, his tactical mind already seeking advantages. If they feed on consciousness, can they be damaged by it as well? Zythrill stared at him. What are you suggesting? You said your people are empaths, connected to each other mentally in ways humans aren't. Could that connection be weaponized? Theoretically. But, Zythrill hesitated. It would require a focal point, a consciousness strong enough to direct the combined mental energy of many beings. A predator consciousness, Moore said quietly. One evolved to pursue relentlessly, to endure pain, to refuse surrender. Understanding dawned in Scythral's alien features. You cannot possibly be volunteering. The strain would destroy your mind, perhaps your very soul. Do we have another option? The silence that followed provided answer enough. The procedure was hastily arranged in the most intact section of the Retribution. Hegemony medical specialists linked their consciousness amplification technology to Moore's neural patterns, while the engineers from both ships worked to convert the output into a weapon that could affect the crystalline vessels. "This is barbaric," Virex muttered as he calibrated the final connections. "We're turning this human's mind into a psychic battering ram." "It was his choice," Allah reminded him. "A choice I'm not sure any of our kind would make." Moore lay on the makeshift medical platform, neural interfaces connected to his temples. Commander Wilson stood beside him. "The Earth will never know what you've sacrificed, Admiral," she said softly. "They don't need to know," Moore replied. "They just need to survive." Scythril approached, his movements solemn. "It is ready, Admiral. Once activated, your consciousness will be expanded. You will feel the minds of my crew linked to yours, amplifying your thoughts. You must focus on a single driving emotion or memory, something quintessentially human, something that defines your species' resilience." "I understand." Moore closed his eyes. "On my mark, Commander." Wilson nodded, then looked to the alien technicians. "Commence on the Admiral's command." Moore took a deep breath, thinking of Earth, of humanity's long struggle to rise from prey to predator to Maclura, of all the times they had faced extinction and refused to succumb. "Now," he said. The universe exploded behind his eyes. Pain beyond imagining. Thoughts that weren't his. Alien concepts flooding his human mind. And somewhere within that storm, a presence both ancient and malevolent, the collective consciousness of the harvesters, aware now that their prey was fighting back in an unexpected way. Moore felt himself beginning to fragment, his identity dissolving under the onslaught. But then he found it, the core of what Scythril had recognized in humanity from the very beginning, the relentless determination, the refusal to yield, the willingness to endure any suffering to protect what mattered. He gathered these quintessentially human traits and forged them into a lance of pure will and thrust it directly at the heart of the harvester consciousness. In orbit around Earth, the crystalline ships suddenly stopped their advance. Vibrations ran through their structures, growing in intensity until the vessels began to crack. Light poured from the fractures, not the light of explosions, but something more fundamental, as if reality itself was leaking out. One by one, the ships shattered, dissolving into cascades of glittering particles that quickly dissipated in the vacuum. On the Retribution, Admiral Moore's body convulsed once, then went still. "Admiral," Wilson cried, rushing to his side. But Moore didn't respond. His eyes stared unseeing at the ceiling, tears streaming down his temples. "His neural patterns are still active," one of the Hegemony medical officers reported. "But they're dispersed, as if his consciousness has been stretched too thin to maintain bodily functions." "Can you bring him back?" Wilson demanded. Scythril stepped forward, placing a six-fingered hand gently on Moore's forehead. "I do not know, but I believe a part of him is still fighting, still pursuing the enemy across dimensions we cannot perceive. The ultimate expression of your species' defining trait." Wilson looked down at her Admiral's vacant expression, recognizing the sacrifice he had made without hesitation. "What happens now, High Assessor?" "Now," Scythril said, his voice synthesizer struggling with unfamiliar emotions. "Everything changes. The Hegemony feared humanity, because we recognized in you what we had lost, the will to fight impossible battles, the courage to face extinction without surrendering." He turned to face Wilson fully. "We surrendered to you because we feared you. But I begin to think perhaps we should have been asking for your protection instead." As if in response, Moore's body suddenly gasped, drawing in a ragged breath. His eyes focused, finding Wilson's face. "Commander," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I saw them. I saw everything." "Rest, Admiral," she urged. "No time," Moore insisted. "They're not defeated, just surprised. They've never encountered our kind of consciousness before, but they'll be back." His eyes shifted to Scythril. "And when they return, neither of our species will survive alone." The alien commander understood immediately. "An alliance?" "More than that," Moore said, strength gradually returning to his voice. A complete rethinking of what we both are, what we could become together. As he struggled to explain what he had glimpsed in that moment of expanded consciousness, none of them noticed the small crystalline shard that had embedded itself in the hull of the Retribution, a shard that pulsed with faint light in perfect rhythm with Moore's heartbeat. The game had changed, and the true architects of this encounter watched with ancient, patient interest. 3 months after the Harvester attack, Earth had changed beyond recognition. The presence of the hegemony and the threat of the Harvesters had unified humanity in ways previously unimaginable. Ancient conflicts were set aside, as the planet prepared for a war unlike any in human history. But the most profound changes had occurred in Admiral Jackson Moore. His neural patterns are still unlike anything we've ever seen, Dr. James Taylor explained to the assembled military and civilian leadership in the underground command center beneath Geneva. The interaction with the Harvester consciousness has permanently altered his brain. On the display behind him, scans showed Moore's neural activity, a strange pulsing pattern that occasionally expanded beyond the confines of his skull in ways that defied conventional physics. In simple terms, Taylor continued, the Admiral now perceives reality differently than we do. He experiences time non-linearly and can sense quantum probabilities that are invisible to normal human consciousness. Is he still human? Asked General Williams, voicing the question many were afraid to ask. Biologically, yes. Cognitively. The doctor hesitated. I'm not sure human is a relevant category anymore. A side door opened, and Moore himself entered, accompanied by High Assessor Zythril. The room fell silent. Moore looked mostly the same, though his eyes now held an unsettling depth, as if seeing through rather than at the people around him. I assure you, General, I'm still quite human, he said with a small smile, just with some expanded perspective. Admiral Moore has become something unprecedented, Zythril added, a bridge between our forms of consciousness. The Hegemony Council remains deeply concerned, but they cannot deny the strategic advantage this provides against the Harvesters. President Tanner stepped forward. And you're certain they'll return? Without question, Moore and Zythril answered simultaneously, then exchanged glances. Moore continued alone. The Harvesters operate on a scale we barely comprehend. What we defeated was the equivalent of a scouting party. They've been harvesting sentient civilizations for millions of years, culling the galaxy whenever intelligence reaches a certain threshold. Then why haven't they wiped out the hegemony already? Williams demanded. Zythril's skin darkened with what humans had learned was embarrassment. Because we presented no threat. The hegemony evolved from herd herbivores. We seek consensus, avoid conflict, and value stability above all. The Harvesters keep us livestock, periodically culling our outlying systems but allowing our civilization to continue. They farm you, Tanner said flatly. A crude but accurate assessment, Zythril admitted. They consume the psychic energy of sentience. A harmonious, stable civilization like ours provides a consistent but modest yield. But humans, he turned to Moore. Your kind generates psychic energy at levels we can barely comprehend. Your emotions are stronger, your conflicts more intense, your triumphs and despairs more profound. We're like supercharged batteries to them, Moore translated. That's why they came here first, even though the hegemony spans hundreds of systems and Earth is just one planet. They sensed our potential. Which brings us to why we called this meeting. Zythril continued. We've developed a plan, one that requires both our civilizations to change in fundamental ways. The plan, when revealed, was so audacious that half the room dismissed it immediately as insanity. You want to merge our species? General Williams asked incredulously. Biologically? Not precisely, Moore clarified. What we propose is a controlled exchange of consciousness patterns, a blending of human predator psychology with hegemony consensus capability. Dr. Taylor leaned forward, suddenly interested. Like what happened to you during the battle, but deliberate and controlled. Exactly, Moore confirmed. The procedure would be refined, targeted to preserve individual identity while expanding consciousness. Every volunteer would remain themselves, Zythril added, but they would gain aspects of the other species' cognitive patterns. Humans would develop limited empathic abilities and quantum perception. Hegemony individuals would gain human determination and individual initiative, creating a hybrid consciousness that the Harvesters have never encountered, Moore concluded. one they cannot easily predict or defeat. President Tanner rubbed her temples. This sounds like science fiction, Admiral. 3 months ago, so did alien invasions, Moore replied calmly. The technology exists. The hegemony has been using consciousness-altering techniques for thousands of years, though never in this specific way. What they lack is our adaptability, our creativity in the face of threats. Combined, we have a fighting chance. And if we refuse? Williams asked. Moore's expression darkened. Then we face the harvesters alone, with conventional weapons that barely scratched their coat ships. The main fleet will arrive within 18 months. The room fell silent as the impossible choice settled over them. The first volunteers for the consciousness merger were military personnel from both species. Moore insisted on oversight of the program, his unique perspective proving invaluable in refining the process. The hegemony provided the technology, ancient devices retrieved from their most secure vaults. Technology they had discovered but never fully understood from civilizations that predated even their 10,000-year history. The transformations were subtle at first. Human volunteers reported increased sensitivity to others' emotions, occasional glimpses of probable futures, and a strange sense of connectedness to the universe. Hegemony volunteers developed stronger individual identities, became more decisive, and began to exhibit creative problem-solving that had previously been alien to their psychology. But as the program expanded, something unexpected emerged, a group consciousness that existed alongside individual identity, a network of minds that could share information instantaneously across vast distances. It's not telepathy exactly, explained Commander Wilson, one of the first human volunteers. More like knowing something without realizing how you know it, perceiving the thoughts of others as if they were distant memories of your own. The breakthrough came 6 months into the program when a human scientist merged with a hegemony theoretician, achieved a fundamental insight into the nature of the harvesters. They don't just feed on consciousness, Dr. Marcus Evans explained during an emergency briefing. They guide its evolution. The harvesters have been selectively breeding sentient species for millions of years, culling those that develop in dangerous directions, preserving those that produce the psychic resonance they prefer. Like the hegemony, Moore added. Peaceful, stable, predictable. Exactly, Evans continued. But occasionally, they miss a species that evolves along a different path. Humanity developed in isolation, our evolution shaped by planetary conditions rather than harvester influence. We're an outside context problem for them, a variable they didn't control. And that's why they fear us. President Tanner concluded. We're not part of their system. More than that, Scythril interjected. When we scanned your battleship, we didn't just see your weapons or your biology. We saw your potential. The scan revealed neural patterns that could eventually develop into something beyond the harvester's understanding. They sense this too, which is why they sent a scouting fleet so quickly. Moore stood, his presence somehow filling the room beyond his physical form. The merger program isn't just a weapon against the harvesters, it's the next step in both our species' evolution. A step towards something the galaxy hasn't seen in millions of years, a truly free sentient civilization. 1 year after the initial contact, Earth's orbit bristled with hybrid technology. Human ingenuity combined with hegemony knowledge. The merged consciousness network had expanded to include millions of volunteers from both species, creating a psychic defense grid monitored by Moore and a council of similarly enhanced individuals. The warning came through this network, a ripple of alarm as the Harvester main fleet entered the solar system. Unlike the crystalline ships of the scouting party, these vessels were massive black spheres that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light, creating the impression of moving holes in space. There were hundreds of them, dwarfing the combined human hegemony defense fleet. They're confused, Moore reported from the command center of the orbital platform. Unity. Our merged consciousness is registering as something they've never encountered before. They're trying to classify us. Around him, the hybrid crew, humans and hegemony working in seamless coordination, monitored the approaching threat. The command center itself was a manifestation of their new partnership, human-style tactical displays alongside hegemony consciousness mapping technology. All defense grid stations report ready, Commander Wilson announced. Hybrid weapon systems online. Scythril, now bearing the scars of his own consciousness merger, joined Moore at the central display. The harvester patterns suggest they're preparing to initiate a psychic assault. trying to overwhelm and consume our collective consciousness. Just as we predicted, Moore said with grim satisfaction. Initiate Protocol Hydra. Throughout the solar system, millions of merged minds shifted into a defensive configuration they had practiced for months. It wasn't about technology anymore, though. The physical weapons would play their part. The real battle would be fought across a mental landscape that had never existed before, one created by the unprecedented merger of predator and prey psychologies. The Harvester attack began without warning. Across Earth and the hegemony ships, unmerged individuals reported feeling a crushing sense of dread and despair, a psychic pressure, trying to collapse their will to resist. But the merged defenders held firm, their hybrid consciousness forming a shield that the Harvesters couldn't penetrate. They're confused by our response, Moore reported, his expanded awareness perceiving the Harvester consciousness directly. They expected either surrender or futile individual resistance. Our collective predator mentality doesn't fit their models. We're countering now, Wilson announced, as the defense grid activated. What followed wasn't just a battle of ships and weapons, but a war of consciousness itself. The hybrid fleet engaged the Harvester vessels with conventional weapons, kinetic projectiles, energy beams, and missiles, while the merged consciousness network launched a coordinated psychic counterattack. The Harvesters reeled under this dual assault. Several of their massive spheres destabilized, their perfect darkness fracturing to reveal glimpses of something ancient and terrifying within. A consciousness so alien that even the expanded perception of the merged humans and hegemony could barely comprehend it. "We've wounded them," Zythril announced, his voice resonating with triumph. "They're attempting withdraw," but Moore's expression remained troubled. "No, they're adapting, changing strategy." He was right. The Harvester fleet suddenly reconfigured, the spheres merging into a single massive construct that blotted out the sun from Earth's perspective. From this new form came a psychic probe unlike anything they had experienced, not an attack, but a communication. "We recognize you now." The message reverberated through the merged consciousness network, felt by every connected mind. "You are the culmination." Moore stepped forward, instinctively becoming the focal point for their collective response. "Explain." "You have achieved what we have awaited, the merging of opposite evolutionary paths, the synthesis we could not force." The implications crashed through the network like a tidal wave of realization. Moore turned to Zythril, seeing in the alien's eyes the same stunning understanding. "They didn't come to destroy us," Moore whispered. "This was a test." The truth, when fully communicated, was more extraordinary than anyone had imagined. The beings they called Harvesters were neither predators nor farmers of consciousness. They were guardians, the last remnants of the original sentient species that had evolved in the Milky Way billions of years ago. They had transcended physical form, but remained to shepherd the development of new consciousness throughout the galaxy. "They've been guiding evolution," Dr. Evans explained to the emergency council that had assembled on the Unity. "For billions of years, they've been conducting a grand experiment, seeding planets with life, then guiding that life towards sentience along different evolutionary paths. Some species evolved from prey animals, developing cooperation and empathic abilities to survive," Zythril added. "Like the hegemony, others evolved from predators, developing determination and individual initiative. Like humanity, but none achieved the breakthrough they were waiting for," Moore continued. "The merger of these different cognitive approaches into something greater than either, until now." President Tanner shook her head in disbelief. "Are you saying they orchestrated all of this? The hegemony finding us? The attack that led to your transformation?" "Not directly," Moore replied. "They created the conditions, ensuring that both evolutionary paths would eventually intersect, but they couldn't force the synthesis. That had to come from free choice." "The surrender," General Williams said suddenly. "The hegemony surrendered not because they truly feared us, but because it was the only way to establish peaceful contact." Zythril's skin flushed with complex emotions. "We did genuinely fear humans when we scanned your ship. What the scan revealed was terrifying to our psychology, but perhaps at some deeper level, we also recognized our complement, what we had evolved away from and now needed. And when the Harvesters attacked, it forced us to collaborate in ways we never would have otherwise," Wilson added. "It accelerated our merger by creating an existential threat." Moore nodded. "The Guardians have been waiting for billions of years for a species, or in this case, two species, to achieve this synthesis. A new form of consciousness that combines the strengths of both evolutionary paths without their weaknesses. But why? Tanner demanded. What's the purpose of this grand experiment? The answer came not from anyone in the room, but from the Guardian consciousness still connected to their network, to create our successors. Those who will guard the galaxy when we finally fade. In the months that followed, the Guardians shared knowledge that rewrote humanity's and the hegemony's understanding of cosmic history. The galaxy had witnessed countless civilizations rise and fall over billions of years. Some had destroyed themselves, others had transcended physical form to explore other dimensions or distant galaxies, but none had achieved the specific consciousness synthesis that the Guardians had been cultivating. They're ancient beyond comprehension, Moore explained during a global address, broadcast across Earth and to all hegemony worlds. They've guided evolution towards sentience on thousands of worlds, hoping that eventually the right combination of species would meet and merge in just the right way. The predator-prey synthesis creates a unique form of consciousness, Saythrill continued, one that balances competition with cooperation, individual initiative with collective harmony. And now, Moore concluded, they're offering to share their knowledge with us, to help us understand our new potential and eventually take their place as guardians of sentient life in this galaxy. Not everyone embraced this revelation. Many humans and hegemony citizens remained unmerged, skeptical of the Guardians' intentions and reluctant to transform their fundamental nature. But enough had experienced the benefits of the merged consciousness to ensure the synthesis would continue. The Guardians did not rush this process. They withdrew to the outer solar system, maintaining contact primarily through Moore and other highly merged individuals who could comprehend their alien thought patterns. They offered knowledge but not direction, ensuring that the new hybrid civilization would develop according to its own choices. 5 years after the initial contact on Titan, Admiral Jackson Moore stood on the observation deck of the Symphony, the first vessel created entirely through the merged consciousness technology. It was neither a human nor a hegemony design, but something new that incorporated aspects of both along with insights gained from the Guardians. Commander Wilson, now Admiral Wilson, joined him at the viewport. The first Explorer teams are ready, 20 systems, selected for initial contact. Moore nodded. And the Guardian representatives, one for each team, as agreed, to observe, not direct. They both turned as Saythrill entered, accompanied by Dr. Evans. Both had continued their own consciousness evolution, becoming something neither fully human nor fully hegemony. The Council and Earth government have approved the mission parameters, Saythrill announced. We begin the Great Synthesis officially tomorrow. Not exactly what either of us expected when your ship surrendered to mine, Moore said with a smile. Perhaps not consciously, Saythrill replied. But I sometimes wonder if, at some deeper level, we recognized each other for what we truly were, two halves of the same evolutionary journey. Moore turned back to the stars visible through the viewport. Somewhere out there were other sentient species following their own evolutionary paths. Some would be compatible with the synthesis. Others would choose different destinies. The Guardians had made it clear that force was never to be used. The merger had to be freely chosen to create the right form of consciousness. Do you think we'll ever know the full truth? Wilson asked quietly. About the Guardians, about why consciousness itself matters so much in the cosmos. I don't think that's a question with a final answer, Moore replied. It's a journey we've only just begun. As he spoke, a small crystalline shard embedded in his uniform collar pulsed briefly with light, one of thousands now distributed throughout human and hegemony space. The Guardians were watching, waiting, hoping that their billion-year experiment had finally succeeded. But the true test was yet to come. For beyond the Milky Way, other Guardian civilizations had conducted their own experiments with consciousness evolution. Eventually these different approaches would meet, and a new synthesis would either emerge or fail. The cosmic game continued, played across billions of years and countless galaxies, and humanity, once a small isolated species on a single planet, had become an essential piece in that unfathomable puzzle. All because an alien ship had scanned a human battleship and immediately surrendered.